Hello everyone, this is Midlife Music Teacher and I'm Mrs. G. And in this video, I'm going to try centers again. So let's take it from the top. I have previously tried centers in my elementary music class back 6 years ago when I first started this position that I'm in now. 6 years ago, I was not only in a new situation, in a new school, teaching a brand new schedule, I was also being evaluated. And part of our evaluation process is we have to have a student learner objective and use assessments and data collection and data dissemination to determine whether or not we have helped our students to show growth in a particular area. I thought that maybe using centers to help me collect data for my SLO would be a good idea. However, I didn't really understand the process of running centers. Looking back now, I didn't really have good centers. Many of them were worksheets, some were like a craft or activity project, and then one of the centers, the students were with me, and this is where I was giving my assessment of them to collect data. I video documented running centers 6 years ago, and I will just insert some of that footage in here and how the process went and my feelings about running centers. Center day, so I gotta set that up. So here are my centers. Third grade is gonna do a center with me with the rhythm sticks and some level 1 rhythms, just so I can get some baseline data on how well they can read rhythms. First and second graders are going to use the apple tree heart poster to show that they can show the big heartbeat, the little heartbeat, and tap the words. And so we can talk about words equal rhythms. I have a little boomwhacker composition station for grades 2 and 3. I have a sheet called Lots of Leaves for grades 2 and 3. We got some fortune tellers here. These are grade 3 fortune tellers, and then there's a different one for grade 2. And so just roll the die, and there's some here if they know how to make them, they can make them. Otherwise, they can play with these that I already made. And another leaf activity. First graders, this station, they got to use the blank paper and these little notes and some glue sticks and crayons. Apparently my glue sticks are duds. And they created cute little pictures with them. This station, they did this worksheet. And they had to figure out how many of each of those instruments. Station, they had a color page. It looks like that. And so I made them a little guide for the color page. This station was a little coloring page. And for first graders, the last station was also apple tree with the pulse, the heartbeat, steady beat. Today is day 2 of centers, and let's just put it this way. I learned some things about running centers yesterday. So I am going to go in there and set up for today, and hopefully it goes a little smoother today. My first graders left a complete disaster. Anyway, again, I learned some stuff. We're going to figure it out today and get going. During the centers, I am working with one center. I'm trying to collect some baseline data, trying to do a little bit of assessment so that I can do my student learner objectives and get that settled before October 11th. I did centers this week, and it's something that I have never done in my 20 plus years of teaching. I've done plenty of small group things, small group activities galore, but never anything like this, where the kids did a different center every few minutes. There were some positives and negatives to it. One of the positives to it was that it gave me an opportunity to assess small groups of children at a time while the rest of them were busy. The downside is there was a lot of setup, a lot of cleanup, and the way our schedule works, we don't have time in between classes. So it cut into my lunch. I only had 20-minute lunches all week this week because of the centers. It really was a lot of work. In fact, in the back seat here, I have a big box full of things to correct. I think I'll probably approach things a little bit differently if I do centers in the future, which I might. We'll see how it goes. Because of that experience, I didn't attempt centers again. Well, wasn't allowed to. A few months after recording that, we had the pandemic and we were all sent home. The following school year, all the specials teachers were pushing carts. The following year, we were back in our rooms, but we were still socially distanced and not able to mix groups. And then I just never got around to the practice of running centers for assessment. Sure, I do run free choice centers, and I'll link that video below of me talking about those types of centers, but those are kind of create and play how they want to. And I'm not running a center, so I'm allowed to walk around and make sure that they're being appropriate, but I'm not assessing anything. Fast forward to over the summer when I took a professional development course, and one of the sessions in this course was done by Aileen Miracle, and she talked about how she does centers in her music classroom. And so after watching that and getting some information and feeling a bit more informed about how to use centers to kind of assess students and how to do centers in a way that is simple enough for them to be able to run the centers themselves, be able to casually walk around and assess students as they're working in the centers. So she recommended 5 types of centers: a center with manipulatives, a center where they're going to do some kind of beat tracking, a center where they will have to do some kind of an assessment like a worksheet or something, a center where they play instruments, and a technology center. Now, I did follow that plan with the exception of the technology center because in order for me to have a technology center, I would have to borrow Chromebooks from the library or the tech department. And while I'm not opposed to doing that, it just wasn't going to work out because I decided to do centers with just my first graders. And first graders aren't as adept at logging onto Chromebooks the way the older students are. Plus, I would have had to set them out on one of my tables, and the centers are only for first grade, so many of my other students need the tables to do their activities. So sometimes I have to set all the centers out and remove them at the end of the class for every class. And that was just going to be a little too much material to be moving that quickly. So instead of a technology center, I put in a composing center. So taking pointers from the professional development that I did over the summer, I decided to try centers again with my first grade students. Center 1 is manipulatives. So students will have to choose a card, duple, and then they can use these little dinosaur keychains that were given to me by the PE teacher a few years ago to create what the card says. So duple or quadruple or triple. And I've had this bag full of these dinosaur dragons, and I thought that a manipulative center using them would be fun for the students. Center 2 is a beat tracking center. So each student will have one of these sheets, and they'll take a pointer, and they'll have to track the beat. So demonstrating the steady beat. Bow, wow, wow, whose dog art thou? Little Tommy Tucker's dog. Bow, wow, wow. So my expectation for them at this center is that they sing while pointing to the bones, which represent the steady beat. It was also recommended to have some kind of an assessment center. So at this center, they'll have to take a worksheet. And I just made this little worksheet to say, circle duple groupings in red, circle triple groupings in blue, and circle quadruple groupings in green. And so they can use the crayons and circle the groupings according to their knowledge of duple, triple, and quadruple, which we will review before we do our centers. Then we have an instrument center, and for this center, students are going to have to play the rhythm for Apple Tree. One of the objectives we're working on in first grade is demonstrating the difference between beat and rhythm. So this center offers them an opportunity to try some different instruments. It's a variety: lollipop drums, woodblock, claves, finger cymbals, cage bell, some different instruments in this bucket, and they will play the rhythm for Apple Tree while they're over here. So the expectation is that they will sing and play the rhythm for Apple Tree. And center number 5 is their chance to kind of do some composing. It's a little composing center. They're going to use these rhythm cards to create their own rhythms, however they would like to. And it's just 2 eighth notes, quarter rests, or quarter notes. And then they would copy their rhythm onto the paper, and we're in quadruple groupings. So they would copy their rhythm onto their own paper, and then they can take a pair of rhythm sticks and play what they wrote. There's an opportunity for them to create 3 rhythms. My expectation here is that they create and play at least 1, but there's an opportunity for them to do up to 3 on this paper. So I ran all the centers with my first graders, and it went so much smoother than 6 years ago. First of all, because I've been doing free choice music centers, I've kind of established the expectations. When the timer goes off, the lights go off, clean up before we switch. So that definitely helped with their understanding of how the process was going to work. Second, these centers gave me much more of an opportunity to kind of casually observe. I did, however, put another song in the beat tracking center. Just one song wasn't enough. I also included the song Bobby Shafto, and I had them point to little boats while they kept the beat to that song. So adding another song to the beat tracking center definitely helped. I was able to gather a lot of information and a lot of data by doing these centers like this. So for me, these centers proved that centers can and do work in the elementary music classroom. Will I do centers with first graders again? Probably. Will next year I think about adding centers for another grade level? Probably. So I'll just have to keep trying and figure out what's going to work for my students, my classroom, my schedule, and my situation. But I'm glad I gave centers another try. Do you use centers in your classroom? What types of centers do you use? Comment below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.